So once again, it's that time of the year. It's fall, it's September, and Apple has just launched the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max models. Now, I personally was not at the event, but I do want to give you a rundown of all the features and additions with these Pro and Pro Max models. First and foremost, let's start with the design, because that's the big new thing. It's a titanium frame with rounded edges. So the phones in general are going to be not only more durable, but also a lot lighter and feel much better in the hand. Now, this is something that I will be looking forward to trying out in person, simply because one thing that's always drawn me away from the Pro Max models is the fact that it's just so heavy and large at the same time. So let's see if it can finally be comfortable enough for me to use on a regular basis. As far as color options, you have a white titanium, you have a natural finish, which is actually going to be just like the Ultra. Then you have a black and also a dark blue. Now, if you really want a good look at the colors, I'll be doing my traditional color comparison of the Pro and standard models like I do every year. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to look forward to that video. Another notable design change is going to be the removal of the mute and ringer switch. It's no longer a switch, but instead a button that you can press and hold. Now you can still mute or put your phone in ringer by pressing and holding it, but what's really cool is that you can map this to any kind of particular app or shortcut of your choice. This I personally like because that means, for example, like let's say when you're coming home and you're pulling into a driveway, if you have a garage that's tied to Apple HomeKit, then you can just press that button and open your garage. Pretty cool. Now, in terms of weight, there's a pretty significant reduction due to the fact that they're using titanium. There's a 19-gram difference between both the 14 Pro and 15 Pro, along with the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max. So that is really going to be something I'm looking forward to feeling once I get the phone in my hand. Last but not least, we of course have to mention USB-C. This has been an industry standard for the longest time, but with Apple, it's finally happening due to the fact that they have no other way around it. The European Union wants all devices to be USB-C. But one difference between the Pro models and the standard ones is the Pro models actually have a USB 3 controller built into the A17 Pro chipset, which we'll talk about in a little bit. What that is going to allow is that the USB-C port on the Pro phones is going to be able to deliver faster speeds up to 10 gigabits per second. What I was kind of disappointed to see though is that they didn't add any fast charging options. I had seen a bunch of rumors about fast charging via USB-C on the Pro models, but sadly that didn't happen, even though this was really the perfect opportunity to do so for Apple. Now next, let's move on to the camera of first the 15 Pro. And if you look at the 15 Pro's camera, it's very much identical to the 14 Pro. It's basically the same camera system with a few improvements. One of those improvements is the auto portrait mode. So for example, if you go and shoot a photo, your phone is going to be able to see that there's a subject in that photo. And even though you're not in portrait mode, it's going to just snap a few pictures ahead of time for you. So that way, later on, you can go back in there and change the depth control. So that is a new addition. What's also new is log format and ProRes. So with ProRAW, you've got the addition of ProRAW as a format for photos. ProRes is the same thing, but for video. And what ProRes essentially just is going to do is capture all that detail. And then when you go to edit your footage later on, you can really tweak the footage and have control of the colors and grading aspect of the footage. Now, because of the USB-C addition with ProRes, you can now do up to 60 frames per second. Before, remember, it was limited on the 14 Pros if you got the 128 gigabyte capacity. That is no longer the case, and now you can do that directly onto an external hard drive. That is going to be really cool and something that I will definitely be testing out. for myself. So as far as I can tell from just looking at Apple's website alone, the 14 Pro and 15 Pro have a very identical camera system, except for those few things I mentioned. But what has changed more so is the 15 Pro Max's camera system. The 15 Pro Max is getting even better stabilization because it has more space to work with. They are improving sensor shift stabilization to a multi-axis system. So I'm really curious to see how much better it's going to be because the 14 Pro already performed really well in this category. And if you're curious to see it, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel because I will be dropping those videos as I get those phones in my hand and I get to play around with them. Now, another thing that's changed on the 15 Pro Max's camera system is the 5x optical zoom. Now, on the 15 Pro, you're going to get the 0.5 for the ultra wide, 1x, 2x, and then 3x. But on the 15 Pro Max, you're going to get 0.5 for the ultra wide, 1x, 2x, and then 5x instead of the 3x optical zoom. So now let's move on to performance. The iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max are going to be the first phones to feature a Pro Apple chip. So these are getting the A17 Pro. Now what's really changed with this is the enhanced performance, GPU performance with things like ray tracing when you're playing games. But what's really unique is the USB 3 controller. And that goes back to the phones getting USB-C and being able to transfer data at those higher 10 gigabits per second speeds. Now the 14 Pro and Pro Max with their A16 Bionic chip were not slow by any means, nor did they have poor gaming performance, but this is going to be a nice bump up that we see year over year. Now another notable change is the capacity of the phones. And yes, in 2023, for some reason, we still have the 15 Pro starting at 128 gigabytes, but the 15 Pro Max is only going to be starting at the 256 gigabytes. So technically, it's $100 more than the 15 Pro, but then it's not increased in price because that was still the price of the 256 gigabyte Pro Max of last year. So overall, the 15 Pro and Pro Max didn't get huge improvements. So if you're on last year's 14 Pro or Pro Max, I would hold on and just wait another year. But if you are somebody that's on, let's say, a 12 Pro or Pro Max or even older, then this is going to be a huge upgrade for you across the board. I'm really curious to know, what do you think of Apple's event and these phones in general? So drop a comment down below and we'll continue chatting there. Thank you so much for your time. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up as it really helps me out. Take care of yourself and I will see you in the next video.